Hello and welcome to Crossroads. My name is Guy Parmenter with the Etowah Valley Historical Society. I'm standing along the banks of Two Run Creek about 1.5 miles south of Kingston. We are at the home of Ronnie and Donna Weaver, where today we're going to discuss grist mills. Please join my children, Andrew, Julie, and me as we learn all about grist milling. And as soon as I can get the kids together, we'll begin the show. Andrew, do you know what a grist mill is?
Something that grinds wheat.
Well, that's close. That's right. It's a mill for grinding grain, both corn and wheat grains. Let me tell you a little more. Grist milling is actually a process for grinding corn kernels and wheat grains. The early settlers, most of whom were farmers, didn't have grocery stores. They took their wagon loads of corn and wheat to the grist mill to be ground. Most corn was ground for meal and some was ground for animal feed. The wheat grains were ground into flour. Grist milling first began in northwest Georgia in the early 1830s as settlements sprang up. Grist mills could be found on just about any creek in what is now Bartow County where there was enough water to power the mill. Cedar Creek, Stamp Creek, Pettit Creek, Two Run Creek, Pine Log Creek, Altoona Creek, and many others saw mill activity. Even the Etowah River had its share of mills. Most mills were small and built by farmers for their own use and that of their neighbors. They usually served from 3 to 7 families. The common mill was a 2-story frame building built of timber. An enterprising farmer could construct a mill building and with the help of an experienced miller, hang a wheel, gear the operation, and quickly open for business. The mill could provide a good secondary income. Andrew, have you heard the term custom mill? Do you know what that is?
No.
Well, it's a mill used for local consumption. The mill would grind the grain and they would sell it back or grind it for the local farmers in a particular neighborhood. And those farmers would use it for their own home consumption. Julie, how about a merchant mill? Have you heard that?
No.
Well, it produced large quantities of meal and flour for a commercial market. And the commercial market is where it was sold to stores, and the store sold it to you, the customer. The Gaines and Lewis Mill here on Two Run Creek was a merchant mill. The 5-story building, which once stood right over there, was considered one of the most automated mills of its time. This mill was originally built in 1870 by H.S. Crawford. Lewis, Pendleton, Gaines bought the mill from Crawford, with the old Western Atlantic Railroad running its track just beyond the mill. Many carloads of wheat and corn were delivered for grinding and then shipped out to markets elsewhere. Flour operations stopped in 1910 and corn grinding stopped in 1955. Mill statistics in 1880 show this mill annually producing 35,000 bushels of wheat, 540,000 pounds of cornmeal, and 345,000 pounds of animal feed. In addition to the mill, there was the miller's house and a tool shed. Some other large merchant mills in Bartow County were the J.M. Veach and Company Mill at Adairsville, the J.M. Ford Mill on the Etowah River, Mosteller Mill near Adairsville, and the Best and Weems Mill about a mile south of here on this same creek. A portion of the Mill Pine Dam remains to attest to this once successful mill, which ground over 400,000 pounds of corn annually. These remains can be seen on the Cowan Farm just east of the Kingston Highway Bridge, which crosses Two Run Creek. Julie, what was used to actually grind the grain?
Rocks.
That's right. They use huge stones, some from around here. The milling process involves grinding the grain with rounded stones. Stones varied in quality, with many stones of locally quarried granite, while others were imported. The favorite stone was burrstone, imported from France. French burrs held up longer and produced a finer grind. These stones were expensive and normally only purchased by the larger mills. Smaller mills normally used local granites. Andrew, how many types of grist mills are there?
6.
No, there's actually 5. The cheapest and easiest to construct was the tub mill. Tub mill buildings were small, generally only large enough to hold a run of stones and a hopper. A hopper was the wooden bin above the stones into which the grain was poured. Water was channeled to the blades of the wheel. Both the wheel and the runner stone were mounted on the same shaft, hence the stone revolved at the same speed as the wheel. Speed was adjusted by controlling the flow of water in the flume. Another type of mill, and probably the most familiar looking, was the overshot mill. Water would strike the wheel over the top, causing the gravity of free-falling water to power the mill. The undershot mill and breast mill were similar in appearance, however, water struck the wheel from different positions. The water current pushed against the bottom blades of the wheel on the undershot mill, while on the breast mill involved water shooting onto the wheel just above or below the axle. The last type and most efficient was the turbine. The Gaines and Lewis mill on this site right here was a turbine-driven mill. The operation of this type of mill will be discussed later in the show. As in all things, there is an exception to the rule. The J.M. Beach mill near Adairsville used steam power. Very few ruins exist from the large number of mills formerly present in Bartow County. Mill statistics for the state of Georgia show 22 mills in Bartow County in 1880. Research indicates, however, that many other mills were present which were never counted and that many others came and went before and after this time. Some were lost during the Civil War. Most, however, simply have not been able to withstand the ravages of time. Some have been dismantled for building materials and others have been washed away by floods. Unfortunately, many have just been allowed to rot away on their foundations. Dense thickets, erosion, and silting have in too many instances destroyed all traces of the mills. The short span of a century saw the birth, maturing, and death of grist milling in Bartow County. Most mills ceased operation at the end of the 1930s. We are fortunate, however, to have 2 remaining grist mills, although neither is in operation today. One of them is my Stellar Mill near Adairsville. The other existing mill is my next destination. Please join with me as we travel back to Cartersville. I'm here at Jones Mill on Pettit's Creek at the north end of Cartersville. It's owned by Butch and Melissa Walker. With me today is Butch Walker, and he's going to tell us all about the operation of the old mill here on Pettit's Creek. Butch, how old is the mill?
Thank you, Guy. I understand it dates back to 1840. As far as any documentation we have, it shows around 1875, and then I've read an article in, I think, the local newspaper said it was pre-Civil War. So I can't identify it as tonight 1840, but we could talk to Mr. Word over here, and they maybe could tell us. That's, you know, I'm passing down what they've told me and what we did in the deed research whenever we bought the place. It's now Rogers Mill since 1934. Okay. It was Jones Mill up to that time, as I understand. I think if it was indeed built in 1840, then I think it functioned until 1909, and then it was dormant from 1909 to around 1934 when Clark Rogers bought it.
Right.
So we have the Word brothers with us, so we can get the word from the Word brothers here and introduce them. Mr. Philip Word, Mr. Joe Word, and Mr. Bradley Word. So these are the heirs that I and Melissa bought the mill from, and all I have been able to do is just repeat what Mr. Word has told me, and I probably told it wrong several times, so we've got the true word here today. So, Mr. Word?
Oh, I hear this is the last operating mill in Bartow County.
Well, as far as we know it is. As far as we know it is. You know of any?
No, I don't know of any.
No,
of course, we've been gone for quite a number of years,
yeah.
But as far as I know, that it's the only one.
Well, how much? What was your involvement exactly with the mill, Mr. Word?
Well, we operated it, sold a meal in town, and ground for the people that came, and that was just about it. But that was enough.
So you started in 1934 with?
No, I didn't start till my mother and daddy moved out here, and I came home. I was going to school down at Milledgeville. I graduated and come home and then started working at the mill, learning how to grind corn. Had a pretty good teacher, a fellow by the name of Price. He was here then.
Now, did this mill just grind corn, or was it involved in flour, or did it have a sawmill attached?
At that time, we just had the corn mill, and I believe it was a couple of years later that Unc added the flour mill. People here in Georgia started up in here started growing more wheat, and so he put that little mill in, and we had quite a bit of business until they just quit. And then I think we discarded the mill after they quit growing wheat.
We did all this too on a toll basis. You know, they'd bring in a bushel of wheat, and we had a little toll bucket, and we'd dip us out about 8 pounds, I guess it was, for a bushel of wheat or a bushel of corn, either one.
Yeah, same
And I
thing.
remember one time I was running a wheat mill when I was about 13, and a fella came in, and we ran the wheat upstairs, and I went up, and I was grinding on another fella's turn, and so I took out 8 pounds out of my little bucket and put it over in our barrel. And he was with me again when I went back up there when we grinded on his, and I took out another one, and he said, "Sonny," he says, "you're tolling me twice, aren't you?" So it was quite a thing here. At times there'd be 8 or 10 wagons parked in this yard out here, waiting to get their wheat or
Some
their
of it
corn.
bring wheat and corn, and some
And
of
some
them
of
be
them
here
would
all
come and
day.
leave it, and then they'd come back
Yeah.
late the next afternoon after they'd been
Wagons.
in the Carters for the shop and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, was the corn ground in the mill, was it better than what you can buy in the store now, or similar?
Better.
A lot better.
It,
Didn't hesitate at all
take-
about that.
or you take these mills in town, they're small rocks, and they're run by electrical power, and they run them rocks so fast it just burn the mill up. This didn't do it. That meal will be just as cool when it come out of there.
Now, is there certain types of corn that you use, or is some corn better than others to make cornmeal?
Yeah, hickory cane made the best meal that we ground here. But there didn't too many people raise it. They generally raised this Tennessee red cob and another variety, but it made pretty good meal, but it wasn't as good as that hickory cane.
We could tell when the bootleggers came with their, because they always brought yellow corn. Yeah, we could tell just as well when it was a bootlegger. He'd have that yellow corn to grind. We'd have to clean the whole system out after we ground his corn to get all that yellow corn out of it. Yes, sir.
You'd get in those in the rocks, you know, between them in those grooves and everything, and you'd have to run, I guess maybe 10 or 12 pounds of corn through there before we could ever get it all out.
Of course, we say that and fed the hogs with it.
Yeah.
Now, did y'all grow any corn here on the property?
No,
Not
all we
very
had was a
much.
corn patch just for eating roast ears. But he didn't have enough property, you know, in cultivation that
Really
paid to do it. Up yonder he had peach trees and grapevines, and there just wasn't much out here for that. But we went and bought lots of corn here and there. We used to go up to Carter's quarters and all around up in there.
And as far as during the year, did you grind all 12 months? Did people store corn to bring to you at certain times, like fresh?
We ground every month because we sold meal, you know.
The only time really that the mill would be down would be in the real hot, dry weather, and the water we just get down to a trickle here, and we just wouldn't have enough, and that might go on for 2 or 3 days, but that was only a short time during the year when we would just get down to a trickle of water.
I know.
And
Go ahead.
There's lots of times that these farmers they'd run out of corn that they'd saved, from the year before harvest because they'd feed it up. And the bugs would eat it up, and you couldn't grind it if to eat up with bugs, or we wouldn't. Not for meal.
Well, that leads you to that. You were telling me, Butch, the other day about how you get rid of the rats in the mill that like to feed on the corn.
King snake, I believe. Didn't Clark have a king snake, a pet king snake here?
Yeah.
Or,
It was a chicken snake. It wasn't no king snake.
okay.
I bet you that thing is 10 foot long.
I believe some of his ancestors or his children are still here, 'cause I saw one out in the tree the other day.
Did you?
About 8 feet long, yeah.
We used to go up on top of the mill, and up there there'd be a long snake skin where that thing is.
There was a skin up there this morning,
There was.
really?
Sure
There's
was,
one
so-
still here.
which I'm glad because that keeps rats out.
That's right.
Oh,
Anything
yeah,
else.
those black
and
snakes.
keeps a lot of people out too.
Well, yeah. That's,
I'm not sure Cheryl's gonna want to go upstairs now.
boy, wouldn't let nobody bother that snake.
Well, I had heard, I think Mr. Johnny Mitchell told me, or it may have been you. Like I said, all I've been able to do is repeat stories that y'all have told me that he had like a pet snake in here that would come down and be with him or whatever.
You know,
I don't know
that's where you
anybody
got
that
your, out that walkway, there was an old tree there.
Yeah.
And that thing would crawl out that and lay up on it in the sunshine. And I bet you he's that big around. he was a big one.
So he
That's pretty large.
bigger every year, don't you?
He was big.
Right.
Now, he was big.
He was a big one. He sure was.
Well, I wish you'd go around and show us how this mill operates. I notice this doesn't have a wheel. You think of the old grist mills with a big round wheel to turn all
Overshot. They call those an overshot or an
Right.
undershot one.
Right.
Yeah, either one.
So how does this one operate?
Turbine.
How about showing it to us?
And it's always had a turbine on it,
Well, you
right?
won't
It's
be able to
always-
see it because the turbine is down in a box, way down the shaft from that you look at out there where the drive shaft is.
Now,
That
she
turbine
can
is
get
about
a shot of
15
it
feet.
by going out there on that walkway and looking down in there.
Okay. Let's,
You can see it.
Why
I
don't
looked
we
at
walk
it while
around
ago.
Oh,
here?
you did?
Take a
Oh,
look at
I
that.
thought water was
All
in there. But
No, there's no water in there now.
I'm curious about the old iron pipes now, if that was to keep you from backing your truck through here, Joe, or did the wagons or the trucks
it was
back up
really
against?
both.
Or both?
It was
Because Phyllis said that you were bad about, not driving real when you first started out.
when I was about 12 or 13, I guess. Yeah.
But we've had a lot of people come up here, since we've been here the 6 years we've been here, and they said they came with their mother and their grandfather, their granddaddy, whoever, and with wagons of corn, and remember coming right here, and you said there'd been 6 or 8 at a time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Gosh, yeah.
So it's mind-boggling to me to build a building so big just for this one operation of grinding corn. So it must have been a real staple for people. I mean, you just had to have. I mean, it was just.
Well, you did.
Yeah, gosh,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's indicative of how important it was, because they built all this
back
just to
then-
grind corn. I mean, it's just.
Back then, why, people had to have the meal.
Yeah.
And lots of people farmed, and that's the thing of the past now. All these old farmers have died out.
At one time, too, we would, if people brought wheat, before we got the wheat mill, or the flour mill, we'd grind the wheat on that mill and make whole wheat flour for them.
Yeah.
And you'd have to sift the bran all out of it to make the bread with. But,
Yeah, I want to show them that upstairs. I think that's a neat old wheat separator where the chaff came out the side of
that
the mill.
thing
here.
was originally designed, they tell me, for, wheat you hear about it having smut in it.
And
Well,
then-
that was designed to take the smut out of the wheat.
My wife still puts smut in some of the things we have with wheat. I think we're overcooking too long.
Les is not here to finish.
I thought that was customary. So. You want to go around? We'll look at the turbine.
Good, fine.
Okay.
Mr. Word, a lot of people back here said, when did they take the wheel off? And we've already stated there was never a wheel on here as far as you know
No wheel.
in your lifetime.
It's always been
Always
a
been a
turbine.
turbine. And it was
yeah.
a wooden box around the turbine when Clark bought it?
Yeah. All right. No, he built that. See, there was an old original one there.
Okay, it was
And
wooden?
the old turbine was still sitting there. And so he built the new flume box and bought the new turbine and put it in. And then he had to build his race back up this way.
I see. So it takes a lot of head of water to run a turbine, more water to run a turbine than it does an overshot wheel or an undershot wheel?
Well,
I think this
I
race...
think it'll take a little more to run this, but you don't have room here for an overshot wheel.
Okay.
But it does take more water,
Takes more water?
for a turbine than it does
yeah.
overshot.
Because this
or an
raceway is
undershot.
about 2,000 feet long
Yeah.
and about
Yeah.
3 feet deep. And when you flooded that, whenever you released the water at the dam up
Yeah.
there, flooded this turbine, were you able to stop it right here and control
yeah.
it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you controlled it
With
all
your-
right here.
The race
Your
stayed
gate
full all the
closed.
time when you weren't running. You
Yeah.
shut down the turbine, the race would just
Fill
fill
back
right
up.
up to the top. So you had about 20 foot of water is what you had.
Okay.
20 foot head of water.
A head of water.
Over
And
the
explain
turbine.
to me how that does and about how the turbine actually works.
Well, it's got veins in it. And when you pull that gate up, that water starts through there and that thing starts turning.
So it's like it's more or less like a wheel sitting horizontally
Yeah,
and
uh-huh.
water come down
It's like
here
a
with-
turbine in a converter or something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
and then you have a rod that comes up out of there, a main drive that
Yeah,
comes with these
that-
cogs right here.
That's it right there. And it has steel pinion on it, and the other one has got wooden teeth in it.
What's the purpose of the wooden teeth?
Well, to keep it from tearing up something.
So if it
something
sheared,
happens.
it would break the teeth and knock it
Yeah,
out.
and we've
Wooden
had to
teeth.
change them several
see.
times. Shaft slide or something, you know, and it'd strip every one of them off.
So it's got a main shaft that goes underneath the
That's
mill
right.
that all these belts are hooked up
That's
to
right.
in here.
Yeah.
But I noticed even outside where the old blacksmith shop is,
Yeah,
he had a grinding stone hooked up by water power.
yeah, yeah.
Was all this your idea, or was this?
No, that was
Clark's?
on.
Was it?
That was on.
He was a real blacksmith. That
Buddy.
man was. He was just. It was
He could make anything, I reckon.
out of steel. He could. We have a poker at home that he made plated. It's a 4-plat. The handle is, and he did all that in that old forge, I guess.
Yeah, I got
and
one
plated
too.
that metal.
Shovel
amazing.
But he made so much of this thing. It's just amazing. It's kind of I don't remember.
Well, I
what
noticed
all-
these big timbers that are under here. They're about 30 or 40 feet long. And
He got them.
how in the world did you get those timbers in there?
Oh,
Manpower, or do you have?
Well, now he put
Horsepower.
those, I wasn't here when he put those on there, but that's what he had to do when he first bought the mill.
Because it was in bad shape when he bought it in
Yeah,
1934.
it'd drop down, and see, that's what keeps your rock level and everything.
And he built this just to protect this because you had to keep this well greased and all.
Yeah.
And it's still got the original, I mean not the original, but the old belt is still on it and all.
yeah.
It hooks up
Same-
directly
same
to the
stuff.
shaft of the stone.
Yeah.
For the viewers who are not knowledgeable about grist mills, would you explain what the mill pond is and exactly what a raceway is? Describe, you know, what they involved.
Well, the mill pond is, of course, contained with a dam, which is, I guess 2,000 feet up the creek from us. And this is in order to get a head of water over the turbine in order to give the power down
turn.
through the turbine.
Right.
And so the water would come down through the turbine and then rotate the thing and
So you would flood that up there. Would you shut
Open
that back
the-
off or just leave it open and let the creek flow?
No.
yeah, we just left it open except when it was, we need to get in the race for something
If
or
it was
And the
gonna
race is
rain or
nothing but a
something.
ditch is what we're
Just a
saying. A
ditch,
hand-dug ditch all the way,
Yeah.
3 or 4 feet wide and 3 or 4 feet deep.
But it had a
And-
fall on it now.
Oh, you had to dig, this thing was dug with a fall, so it would
Yeah.
yeah, it had to.
Had to have
yeah,
that fall
gravity.
where you'd get that
Right.
push.
Well, how long could you grind on 2,000 feet of water 3 feet deep? 2 hours? An hour?
you could grind.
no,
You grind all day long, you just
When
let the
the
creek flow in. Okay.
When the creek was running good, you could run 24 hours a day.
Okay, I
And it'd
see.
still be water running down the creek.
Well, they still, okay. That was my next question.
See, like now, this much water running down the creek, you could grind all day here.
It would still come over the dam and through the
Yeah.
creek. See, that's,
Other days,
oh, young boy, we don't know.
Other days you'd pull it come down and there wouldn't be any water running over. And like I say, if it was just a trickle, then you might not be able to run but 4 or 5 hours, and you'd have to shut down until the water built back up.
Okay, because I had heard stories that sometimes you had to wait to grind again.
you did.
Well, that's right.
So it's according to the level of the creek. And of course, this water comes from
Aubrey Lake.
Aubrey Lake, yes.
Yeah.
Well, another time we would have to shut down too, I forgot about that, was when we'd have heavy rains and the water would get up, plumb up in the turbine. Well, you wouldn't have any head to run it through
Right.
the turbine, so we'd have to shut down then.
couldn't
We'd be
run
down
it
here for
off.
several days when the water would. Well, I've seen it. Well, I guess, fellas, hadn't we? Plumb
Right
up
up
over
the
the
top
top
of
of
the
that.
race,
Plumb
yeah.
up over.
Almost up to the top of that
Yeah.
right there.
So
Just
flooding,
lapping.
flooding was a major problem then for the grist mills. on the
Yes,
creek.
yes, it was.
Springtime,
Yeah.
I guess, you had a lot of spring
Yeah, and
rain.
another thing, you had to keep that gate closed up yonder.
And
If you left that gate open
In a
and the
flood.
water got up, it'd fill that raceway full of sand. The woodwork up there especially, which was about 35, 40 foot long till it hit the dirt. And then you'd have to get in there with shovels and throw that sand out.
Did you ever have any problem with beavers or anything coming down the raceway?
Oh,
Or
muskrats.
muskrats?
In the
In the raceway.
big
that's
holes
what
into the side
made
of the
it so
bank
bad.
up there, and gosh, the water.
Lost
First thing
lots
you
of
know, the
water.
We
water.
never passed any through the turbine that we know of.
Oh no.
See, we had
had a
You had a grate right there, something to
right
keep
there in
the
that
debris out.
flume line up there, but you had to go and rake the leaves off that in the fall.
Oh, and leaves would come on through, and you'd get down in the turbine
Yeah.
too.
Now, when
You
this
had-
thing is running and all this is running, all these belts, was it real loud? You could hear it outside, or was it just whizzing? Or
Oh, it didn't make a lot of
Not a lot of
noise.
No, it didn't make a lot of noise.
Except when the
noticed-
sheller was running.
Yeah.
Sheller made a lot of noise.
I want to go inside and show them where the belts are hooked up and how they run. That just amazes me that everything's still there. Now, y'all ground here till 1971, I think. Is that correct? Is that when?
No, I didn't. That's when Daddy and
But I mean,
Clark.
Daddy
yeah,
died in
Mr. Rogers'
72.
granddad in 1971. The mill functioned until
And he
1971.
had somebody who was helping him. Mr. Dixon. Yes.
Mr.
Arthur
Dixon.
Dixon. Arthur
So he
Dixon.
built him a little house up yonder. And
Yes, sir.
him, Mr. Dixon and his wife lived there. And, till,
I've got
they
some of
quit.
the old record books up here where they ground, you know, for what grocery stores
Oh,
and whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we did that with the toll, you know, the toll that they
Yeah.
took, then they,
Well, you double told them.
yeah. I don't tell that.
The raceway is lined with concrete now. It certainly wasn't that way at the beginning.
From up there where your woodwork from the dam to the dirt there, then it was the concrete. But that stuff had been there so long till it just crumbled.
Okay.
We went in there and he bought concrete slabs from a concrete company here in Cartersville, and there was interlocking slabs, and we'd take them in there and set them on that side. That was the worst side, and that's where the beavers and everything else
That's
cut
right.
that bank. And we did that nearly down to the curve down here where that big tree is, and then we did pour some concrete in the bottom, and that was. But this down here, it just kept getting wider and wider, and there wasn't nothing we could do with it. But it did all right.
Well, let's go inside. And,
Okay.
Before we go inside, we were
Okay.
talking about these
I'm sorry.
doors up above
Well,
on the second floor. What are these for?
Well, they were saying ventilation on the other side, and I assume that's what this would be here. And I can explain the top one. When I bought this 6 years ago, we replaced the boards from the second story floor on up because they were in such bad shape. I was afraid I was going to lose the mill because of water and deterioration. So 2 friends and myself put these walk boards out there, and just had one little catwalk up there. And when we got up that far, we had to build us another door to get back in.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for the top door up there. And I didn't spend a lot of time out on that catwalk, I can assure you. The other guys did. Like I said, I guess it's just for ventilation, and that explains that top. We got a lot of ventilation now. And then, of course, what we're standing on here is a deck that I added, actually, Jackie and I added last year, and he's my new neighbor, Jackie Copen. We built this because I don't know where I've said it or not. I said earlier that this is my dog house, and I stay in it most of the time. So this is the porch to my dog house. So I stay out here on this, and we want to be able to get out here and enjoy the creek. So we just came and tied right on top of the turbine. I call this whole unit the turbine. I know you call the turbine actually is down in there, but we just tied on here and went on back, and then we built this new deck out here. But we've enjoyed it. So let's go inside, man, and see what.
Good.
This is the news coverage of Bartow County you'll get everywhere else. This is the in-depth coverage you get only from the AM 1450 WBHF and Prestige Cable Channel 4 news team. School closing, weather changes, business openings, crime news, political development, local sports, breaking stories, family issues, legal proceedings. News that affects you. The only real choice for local news. AM 1450 WBHF and Prestige Cable Channel 4.
Okay, so Philip, these wheels are turning right up here by these belts. Is all driven by the main one underneath here by water power. And then tell us what happens here right here.
well, you put your corn in up here. Use a shovel or a pitchfork, and your corn cobs come out here, and your corn, that shell drops off in this chute right here, comes into this elevator, which picks it up and carries it up through the next floor, and the chute that comes down from there down to your hopper over here. to where you can be a
Okay.
grinder.
This is the grain elevator that you're talking about. These cups pick up the little kernels and take it up. So this thing is just running up and down all the time. And then we've still got some of the old cobs left in here. And then I guess y'all took them and threw them over in that corn.
You know, that was one of my first jobs. They'd call on old Joe, you know, and he was just a little bitty squirt, you know, and they'd say, get those cobs out of here. And I had to take the cobs. Well, at first we took them from outside and piled them out. And then in later years, we had a hammer mill, and we ground those cobs up for cow feed. So, but at the time when I was first started doing that, I'd have to get them outside, bring the hopper back, and we'd start all over again.
Now, how often did you have to clean out that corn cob bin over there? Because I've left it just like that, of course, because I want to leave it for, you know, for.
Well, some days how often did we clean it up?
Yes.
My gosh, you'd have to clean it out once a week because we'd fill that thing up in a week.
So what's in there would be like a week's worth of grinding?
Oh, yeah, and when we was really grinding it would. In the wintertime, in the late fall, after the corn had been gathered, you know, the farmers had gathered the corn. Gosh, it'd be...
Let's go over here now where the corn comes down the hopper. Now, at this point, we've got just kernels of corn coming down to the top of this hopper right here.
That's right.
Now, what's happening underneath here?
All right. It goes in this hopper, and this outfit right here, right there, that controls, you twist that, and that controls the amount of corn that goes down in your rock.
Which has a hole in the center of the rock.
That's right. And then this wheel here is what you set your rock down to the bedrock. You don't get it too. Got two rocks.
One's called the bedrock, and the other one's called
top runner.
Top runner.
Yeah, and this one turns, and if you get them too close together, they bump, and then you got grit in your mill. And you just got to know.
Takes years of experience of doing this.
Years, but you can learn it if anybody wants to.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing right here is that'll raise, and this thing has got a kind of like a.
Doesn't this bump?
Square. It bumps that thing, see? Yeah.
Bumps like that.
Yeah, but it don't bump that,
Not that
bad.
fast.
It just enough to keep
just
your
shakes
corn
it.
coming out of there.
I see.
And see, this thing here, when like you was grinding for one and you had somebody behind him, you get the first one's corn in here, you could close that little door and then go ahead and shell his corn up and let it set up in here till you grind this out.
I see.
And when that gets down, you just pull that and let that corn run in there.
So you have to control the speed of this rock, because if you grind too fast, it'll scorch the corn meal.
Well, actually, this didn't run that fast.
I see.
It just didn't run that fast, but if you got it too close, it'd make too fine a meal, and then that's no good. But you
That
just
wheel right there on the right is the one that governs the speed, how fast it runs. Now there's another wheel. Can you see that lever over on the other side over there?
Yeah.
That governs how high that rock is. So you'd crank that up, you know, and that would keep your rocks from bumping. You would never let the rocks bump when it rotated. You could hear it bump. So if it bumped just a little bit, you'd raise her up just a little bit and keep feeling of the meal. And when a fellow would come in here, some people wanted their meal real coarse, and some wanted it real fine. Well, if they want it real fine, you got to run that rock down there as close as you possibly can without bumping.
Okay, now I'm gonna ask a dumb question. Okay.
All right?
You ground grits here? Did you grind grits?
We could grind grits.
Now, what's the difference between grinding the cornmeal
Just coarse.
and grits?
Coarse. Just grinding coarse.
Making a real coarse meal is grits.
Uh-huh.
You can tell I'm a city boy, so didn't know. But
you like grits.
oh yes, sir.
Yeah, me
I like mine with smut in them, like my wife cooks them. That's, you know, no, I'm just kidding. But now tell me about this rock. You said, did you tell me this rock was from France?
Yes, uh-huh.
One of you was telling me that.
Yeah, that's right.
Called the French burr.
French,
burr, B-U-R-R.
French burr.
It's a 48-inch rock.
and it came from France.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the burr was the design of the cut in the rock, how those things were grooved. If you know how yours are that are sitting out here as you come in.
Yes, sir.
Well, this one had a little bit different groove in it. Those out there were made by our great grandfather. He cut them himself.
cut up here.
Had a slave that followed him around, and they went around everywhere and made those rocks, cut them themselves.
Two of them. One of my cousins got it, and Ron come over here and got one of them one time when there wasn't nobody here. We never did get it back.
Oh, man. Well, that's not like something you want to steal in the middle of the night. I mean, I don't think you'd be able to pawn that anywhere. So we're redoing our subdivision entrance out here, and we're going to use that with y'all's permission, you know, at that. And we're not going to set in there in stone, because I think Bradley said he's going to come back and get that stone one of these days. But he'll have to load it by himself, because I'm not going to help him.
So, how long would a stone last in the milling process? How often do you have to get a new stone?
Well, no, you never have to get a new stone. It's the same stone that's been there for, I don't know how long that thing had. But like I say, if you let that thing bump, then you'd have to sharpen it more often. But so if somebody was real careful and didn't let it bump, then that thing may run for 5 or 6 years before you had to raise it up and turn it over and take a hammer and beat those grooves out and rough it up. You know, after you ground a lot, it'd get smooth, so it wouldn't grind real good then. So you
make the meal feel right, you know.
That's what this thing
is for.
Yeah, that's this thing.
Okay.
This thing here. So you'd have to take all this off, all of this, and then with this outfit, there used to be a screw jack. Went up through that.
Let's move this around. If you'll duck your head, we'll show the people that this is used for.
There was a big screw jack went up through here, and this thing fit on top on the screw jack, and then it had two pieces of iron bent on it, and these went on one side and one on the other, and these pins would go in the rock. This rock had 2 holes in it, one on each side. And they'd go in, I believe this one down here, they'd go in these holes, and you just probably take 2 to turn it, but you could pick it up.
2 men to turn it?
Yeah, and then move this thing out this way, and turn that rock over, and you could put it down on the floor, and then work on it.
What would that weigh? Do you have any idea what it weighs? I know it's heavy, but
I don't have no idea.
And do you know what these numbers are for on the side of this? I was wondering about that. Why the numbering system on there?
I don't have no idea. That's been there as long as I can.
Yes, it sure has, a long time. And it's really neatly designed the way it's pegged in. It's mortised and then pegged.
You see, that's like the rest of the building.
Right. This whole building is mortised in, pegged, and the construction of it is amazing to me.
At that point right there is where we took our toll, too. Get down in that hopper. Yeah, we had a big barrel sitting right over there about where Roddy is, and you had a bucket. We'd measured it out, and it was 8 pounds, you know, and you knew when you dipped down in there and got that bucket full, you had 8 pounds of shell corn, and that was our toll for grinding a bushel of corn.
You didn't take a toll of ground corn, just shelled corn?
Shelled corn, right, because we kept that then, and that's how we made a little, you know, with the milling process, is then we would grind that meal and sell it to people that didn't raise any corn.
Now the picture we have of Arthur Dixon is standing down in here. He's catching it as the meal comes out, and
he's feeling of it.
And he's feeling of it, and then I guess he weighed it up right here on these old scales. They've been sitting right there.
That was used for sacking meal like we sell in town.
10-pound bags.
Yeah.
Small bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found the 2-pound bags. Very few 2-pound bags here, mostly 5 pounds and 10-pound bags. It says, you know, Rogers Mill, and then it's got Unc's cornbread recipe on the back of it.
Yeah.
Uncle Clark's, recipe.
Yeah, he had to have that put on there.
Now, I believe you told me that in latter years, when you started doing self-rising cornmeal, that you put the additives in, you put this fake bottom in the meal bin.
That's right.
And it's got a fan that would take the meal underneath the floor here, and come up the other side and go back upstairs.
Yeah, you take the whole cut and slaughter the old bottom of this, and that thing would just set in there like when you're grinding for people. You take that thing up, and that meal would go right on down there, and that fan would blow it plumb up to the top.
and it would take it back upstairs, and that's where you would put your additives in.
Yeah, it would come in that little hopper up there and shake all the brand out.
What do you put in it to make it self-rising? Soda,
Soda and
ash,
three things. Whatever it was,
salt,
up there in
soda,
the
and ash,
buckets.
I believe.
Yeah.
Salt,
Daddy,
soda, and ash, I
Daddy
believe.
did all that. Daddy did the most of that. I never did, because I wasn't here then when they were doing that.
I see. One other question. Why this weight right up here on where we have the rod? Is that just a balance?
That's a grease catch.
It's a grease
I
catcher
see.
up there.
Okay. How little I know about my own thing. Thank you, Bradley. So that's to catch grease.
Been there for.
When you grease, you have to keep these things well greased, so it take a little effort to turn it.
Yeah, although, and some of these shafts turned pretty pure when this thing was really going.
Let's go upstairs and look at the operation up there.
Blacksmith property.
Okay, now we're upstairs. Mr. Phillips, you'll tell me how this works.
It's blown from the hopper down there. The mill is up and comes in the top of this chute right here, and then it drops through on this, which was got a screen in it with a shaker, and that takes the chaff out of the meal, and the meal come out right here, and they kept a big barrel here, and they caught it right there, and then Daddy would dip it out of there. He knew how much he had a.
Yeah, a set of scales. He sat there with that barrel.
That's right. And
When he got to the right weight, then he would add the.
well, he put it in there and then add.
Okay.
Either one.
Well, that's the same difference. But I don't know. He could mix up 4 or 5 bushel at a time, and he'd put it in there and put there. And he kept his ingredients sitting over there and burn.
So that's where the soda and the ash and the salt that
That's
he
right.
put in there would go into this right here.
At the end of this, then see it had a lever on it where he could start it up to turn it.
I see with that
And he'd
chain
mix
drive and all right there, and
Mix it
in the
so
belt.
long, and then you'd just stop it and open that. Sometimes you'd have to run it to get it to come on out.
So this would open right here.
That's right.
And
Open that.
and release it to go back downstairs.
Went down there in the bottom.
You put-
Looking at what
Put the bag on there.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's interesting, years ago, you know, really when we were first running this thing, we didn't sift the meal. So, you know, every woman, when she got ready to make cornbread, she had to have a sifter. Most of them most people don't even know what a sifter is
Yeah,
anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But you had to, we didn't sift it at that time, but it got to where, you know, as time came on, then we had to roll with the tide and get that sifter and put the.
that's not an
Soda
Alabama
and all-
expression, is it? That's not an Alabama expression. Is it roll with the tide?
Oh, no.
No.
Rack and tack.
No, I see. Okay.
War Eagle.
So now that takes care of the milling process here. Now we've
Yeah.
got another piece of machinery over here. Would you explain that to us? I love this because of those stenciling on the side of it, and
Well, this was part of the old original wheat mill that was in here. And that was before Unc bought it, back when the Joneses owned it. This part was here. And after Unc bought it, they took all the old out, and I guess they carried it to the dump or something. And they left this in there. And then he bought a small wheat mill, which was called a Margit Mill, Margit Marble, and set it up downstairs. And the wheat would come up through this thing here, and it would, like you said, it's supposed to take the smut out of it. And it would get wild onions. A lot of it would have wild onions in it. Huh?
Oh, that was tough, those wild onions. Oh,
They
boy.
sure was.
They'd mess up the whole thing.
Yeah, if it ever got in on
now
it.
this wheat had not been thrashed or anything. This was just
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah,
thrashed.
Okay.
it had been, what do you call it, combine or something, where
Yeah,
it's
it
like
was just- it was
corn.
wheat.
just the wheat. All right, but now where did you? I'm confused right here. Where was it put downstairs, and how did it get up here? I guess.
There's a little hopper
Okay.
right down under this on the next floor. And it had a little shaker down there underneath the floor. That's
Okay,
that.
outside and underneath.
That's right.
Outside and underneath the mill.
And it was run off of that line shaft with a little belt, and that thing would shake, and the elevator picked it up right there. That elevator right there picked it up and it come over to this and went through this smutter or whatever you want to call it. And see, it had magnets up there to catch, if you got nails or something like that in anything metal, those magnets would catch it.
So that it wouldn't go into your
Cleaner and
Cleaner.
the meal.
Get in to where your rollers after it goes on through and you gets to your roller, see, in the mill.
Okay, now this thing is rolling here and it's throwing the chaff out the side of the mill, blowing it out. This is kind of like a fanning mill in here. It's cleaning it and blowing it out. I see.
Yeah.
So where would the end result of this go? Back downstairs?
Go into this hopper and then go back down, and then back up this other elevator right over here.
That's right. And there used to be another hopper off, a chute off it that went to the flour mill.
That's right. That other flour mill hopper was sitting. It was right over here, about where that mixer was.
Yeah, because see that was put in after the flour mill is gone.
Yeah, that's where I was the day the guy came up here and caught me double dipping.
Yeah. So it's a neat operation.
I can see why we got these doors up here now for the ventilation, because it's pretty warm up here today. And I can imagine when you get in here and get to work, and even though it's a steep pitch building, it's still, you know, the tin draws a lot of heat. So all these belts right here that we see back over here on all these wooden cogs and pulleys, not cogs, but these pulleys, all hooked up to one shaft. That's correct. That comes underneath the mill.
That's right.
And that's the main
one
right over there.
And that one in the bottom.
Well, yeah, that came from the bottom. There's one more.
I know it. And there's a clutch on that one down there. You could cut it off if you wanted to.
On the sheller.
Was there very much maintenance to this as far as breakdown or anything? Did you, or just
Belts.
Belts is the biggest
That's
thing.
primary.
I mean, belts slipping. You hardly ever had one to break.
Now, how did you repair a belt? Did you splice it back?
Yeah,
Or-
with these, what do you call them clamps, Joe? You remember?
It's like
Alligator clamp.
Alligator clamps.
I see.
That's some of them.
Okay. All that was done by hand, of course.
And it's got a pin.
See, that's got a little piece put in it right there.
Yeah.
See, that belt.
See that?
So you just spliced it where it
Just
broke.
spliced a little
Yeah.
piece in.
You make it sound simple.
Yeah.
Doesn't look too simple. I don't imagine it was. Well, we've replaced the old boards on the back of the mill here because of deterioration up here was the worst. That's the east portion of the mill, and I think it got the worst weather, so I've replaced that, and I use just regular sawmill lumber, you know, that'll will weather, so it should, you know, last a lot longer, because we sure don't want to lose it.
That'll last a long time.
Let's go back downstairs then and maybe go out and see the old blacksmith area. Now that we've gone through the mill, I'm out here to where the old blacksmith shop was, underneath that big old oak tree. I'm just curious to what you use this blacksmith shop for out here. What function was in the mill?
Well, anything iron that he needed to bend or make, he made it right there. If he needed a piece in there, he made it. If he needed something for his wagon or something else, why, he made it. He didn't go nowhere to get nothing made. He could make it.
He was quite a talented person, wasn't he?
He was. He could do anything. Now, I mean,
Blacksmith, engineer.
That's right.
He was an amazing man. He sure
He
was.
was. Now, he used to have no more education than he had.
Yeah.
He was a smart fella, bud.
It's something of a bygone era, that's for sure. And I'm glad I have this place. I'm glad y'all sold it to me. And,
Well, we just appreciate somebody that got it, you know, that wanted to do something with it.
well, all we do is just socialize in it, and like I said, it's my
I hear
dog
you.
house, but I certainly enjoy it. So.
Okay.
Well, Butch, viewing audience appreciates you allowing us to come out here and share the mill with you. I know it's
Well, we're just glad to kind of pass on what little bit we know about it.
well, I tell you, it's a real part of Bartow County history, and
Well, we think it is too.
it's real peaceful and relaxing out here. You know, I can just imagine Clark Rogers sitting with his banjo on the steps,
Lord,
playing along.
I used to hear him on Saturday nights. him and Uncle Johnny and Emmett Cole.
Yeah.
They'd be out here and they'd play till way in the morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Y'all still got the old banjo, I think.
Yeah.
Our children, when we would come to visit, that was a real treat for them. Boy, I tell you, to sit around and listen to them play and sing some of those old songs that go way back. I can
imagine. I can imagine.
We need to do that one Saturday night.
Yeah, we'll do that. Wouldn't last long if I was picking what I was going to say. Or singing.
I know it. Well, thank y'all for being here. Appreciate the Word Brothers coming from Alabama to be with us today and show us all about grist milling. And
glad to do it.
Butch, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry Melissa had to work today.
Yeah.
Oh,
appreciate it.
Good, okay. Good.
We'll see you next time on Crossroads.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you bet.